Hey guys, this is Captain Obvious, and welcome back to Fisher Enclave City. In today's episode, we will construct an interchange that wraps around a mountain. Wrapping highways on a mountain and adding a vanilla interchange can either be an epic win or an epic fail. I will let you guys decide at the end of the video. But regardless of the outcome, this is a strategical decision, so instead of building on a relatively flat surface of the terrain, we will be utilizing the useless mountain that just sits there and does nothing to now have a purpose in life by contributing to society in welcoming highways and interchanges into her many mounds and cliffs. And as a result, the flat surface areas of the terrain will now have a larger space for zoning and constructing our road networks and structures. In other words, we just saved a lot of build space. But the question still stands. Will we have at least a decent looking mountain interchange, or will it look absolutely hideous? I mean, the idea is there, we understand the logic on why we are doing this, but I am still honestly a little nervous on how it will turn out, considering that we do not have Move It mod. Although, regardless of not having Move It mod, we will still do our very best to make the smoothest vanilla roads as possible. It is going to take a lot of patience, but it is still absolutely doable. Alright, let's have a look-see on our progress, and you gotta love those smooth roads. Love that curve and that gradual incline up that hill. That looks fantastic. Going up, and this road seems a little odd. That literally needs to be ironed out. That is so unacceptable, so we will definitely have to redo these roads. So this is going to be a common theme, just to let you know ahead, where we will have to redo roads just so that it's good and nice. That looks like a little tip, like it looks like a jump ramp from here, so we need to fix that as well. So I'm gonna redo that. So actually, when you fix one side, the damage or errors just kind of moves further down. So as you can see, and you look at this one, that's a little off, so I'm gonna have to fix that again all the way to the end. So again, this is a common theme, and now that is a smooth uphill going downhill. And also notice that we're not making just straight roads on a flat surface, we're actually moving up and down, so it makes the road look much more natural, and also on this side seems perfect as it can. And now the next step is to create the other side of the main highway, which will go underneath this bridge. I'm gonna be using the trench bridge technique, where I build a trench, literally a trench, so that I would have an equal footing for the base of our bridges, so that it will remain as smooth as possible. So this is very important at a vanilla level, but of course it's a lot harder to do, but still you can see that it is possible. So don't lose hope that you can't make fantastic roads without mods. And you will also notice that in this set of highways that I have made the roads particularly closer to each other than usual. That is because I am making curved bridges. So when you use straight bridges, it will create suspension, which will require space between them in order to have those pillars for the suspension. But now, since we are using curved roads, that is no longer necessary to have that tiny space in between the roads. And looking at this, so that curve is a little janky, and of course that is unacceptable to the captain, and I will do my very best to fix this. And again, this was actually very difficult to do, because one thing, it's rather long, and you also have to consider the incline and decline, and this took me several attempts. So to save up on time, I actually fast forward it right now, so you can see this is my second attempt, and then this is finally my third attempt, which I made much longer curves, so that now, well, while looking at this, you can see that it's much more smoother than our first attempt. And then you'll also notice that the bridge height between those two sets are rather large gap. That is because I am beginning to anticipate the off ramps that will go in between the two main highways, and that is going to be a real trick to do. But before that, let's extend this road a little further to the left. Eventually that will go all the way to the island on the next side. Looking at it, the incline looks a little too high. I could reduce the height a little, but that is not the focus of this episode. What we want to do is create that mountain interchange, and provided that this is actually the first time I've ever done this, and the tricky part also is having to make the curves look wide and natural, because that is something that you want to aspire on getting when making interchanges. Now try not to mind too much on the depth of the trenches. That will be filled in eventually. So right now I am just using the flat surfaces in order to make our smooth roads. So again, the most difficult part again is having to make your roads go over the large two main roads, and having that to curve widely and naturally as well. So here this looks like a successful curve, and we can proceed to making this off ramp continue and to go over this pile of rocks. I would want to keep those that canal of rocks, but unfortunately we will have to build over them, and then at some point we can like refill that area of rocks as it was, or as much as possible. We're gonna try to do that. I know that there are some people who challenged me into keeping those set of rocks down there. However, these rocks are rather plain, and they can simply be remade, unlike the other natural features of the map. For example, the ruins, which have like broken towers or ancient towers, and then there's also the ruined walls. Those you cannot rebuild, but this set of rocks, we can definitely just refill that in, so almost as if it was never gone. So try not to worry too much. We will try to keep it as it was before we put in this highway. And now let's look at the curves of this. Alright, so what I'm looking at is the right ramp, but first let's look at the bottom bridge. Now that is a smooth curve. That is something awesome that the captain really enjoys. And now let's look at this ramp. So you'll notice that the middle part, since it has to go over that bridge, it was a little flat, and we also need to make this into a much wider curve so that the slope would be a little more gradual. Okay, now that looks pretty nice. Let's refine the left ramp a little further. It's a little too high, so I need to shorten that, or shorten the height, so it does not seem like it's a slide going downhill. And you may also notice that there is a large gap between the main highway and the off ramps. That is because I intend to fill in those gaps with like basically putting back the mountain, because again we are building a mountain interchange, so it's like we did not destroy the mountain in order to place in the highway, but instead put in the highway within, or kind of wrapping around. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that is the idea that I'm making. So yes, that is exactly why we have these large gaps in between, so that I could fill in that area with soil and such. And now back to this off ramp, and we're looking at it, and you can see that the curve, the upward incline is improving slowly yet surely, but we just have to break down those pillars one by one basically in order to get that right curve and also that incline that we are looking for. And of course, to do that, you have to flatten the surface on the bottom and then gradually connect the highway going upward. Now let's check it out again. That's much more smoother. And here now the pillars are moving much closer to the top, and sooner or later we will definitely get this right. And of course, the top part, I kind of fixed that. Now let's check out this slope incline, and that is as smooth as we can get. It's not perfect, but it will have to do. And the curve going upward is also decent. Now we have to think of the road going to the left side, from the bottom to the left. So I want it to go underneath the top bridge, and then it'll have to go over the bottom two bridges, the main highways. And that's very tricky, especially when you want it to curve, and a pillar can only go so far. Like, the best way to do it is making a straight road, but that's not what we want. We want this to curve as widely as possible, and then yes, it has to go over the bottom main bridge and then under the top bridge. The sequence of making that ramp over the main bridge was actually quite long, so you may notice that we've jumped a few frames ahead in order to skip through the failed attempts, which were quite a few. This was definitely no easy task, and it also did not appear as I imagined. I definitely would prefer to have longer continuous curve rather than a wavy curve, which is what we made here on our first attempt. Therefore, I simply had to think outside the box for a vanilla solution. So I redid that road. As much as I wanted to have the ramp go over the bottom main bridge, I thought, what if we made it go under? By going under the bridge, it removes any midpoint pillar issues, which is the source of all our problems. So therefore, I actually learned something new during the build. When building vanilla interchange stacks, it may be much easier if we started on the top of the stack of the interchange and work our way to the bottom. By practice, we usually start with the main highways, then create our off and on ramps, which makes sense because we want control over the direction of the main highways. But on the next interchange that we build, we will try this new theory, and I will share my experience if this was easier or not. And check that out. By going under the main highway, we managed to create wider curves, which is what I have been meaning to make. However, there is now an unnecessary large height gap between the two main highway bridges, where I would prefer that they are much closer to each other. But instead of redoing the bridges, I think we will be able to squeeze in a train line to go above that bottom main highway bridge. Alright, so let's check out this off-ramp, which apparently is a little too low, and too low is an understatement. That is way too low. We need to definitely raise that up a little, and I'm going to create this little side road as a guideline, so we have like a measurement on where or how high it should be. And of course, we don't want it to be hitting that top main bridge, so it needs to be a little under from there. And with that, we can now bring it a little closer, but now it's still a little too high, but at least we will have a gradual decline, which is what we want. And the main highway also needs some little sprucing up. The end part will had a little hump, which is unacceptable, and that looks much more smoother. We just need to fix out the end so that it finishes or goes on a straight line, at least just ever so slightly. And we also need to kind of separate the roads a little bit because it's going to merge into the city, and roads being that close is not going to be made unless you have road anarchy, of course, which is what we don't have. So far we have excellent progress here. Everything is looking very, very natural, and we just need to smoothen out the terrain. That is extremely important to make sure that there are no unusual cracks along the road line. And now here, let's check it out. It looks pretty neat. I think it's time to fix this left ramp. It goes a little too high, so we need to reduce its height. And also, we need to pull back the merging part of this area, so it is the same with the other side. Alright, so we're gonna do this slowly yet surely. We're gonna work with one ramp at a time. We gotta make sure that the length is good, the curve is good, and also the decline. So those are three main things that we have to watch out for. So let's take a closer look. So the right ramp looks good. The left ramp is also slightly good, but we have this little down dip, which is unacceptable. That is because the terrain was a little too high, so we just need to lower that down. Now we have a very smooth left ramp. The right ramp also looks pretty darn good, and here we just need to smoothen out the curve, and that wraps up that left ramp. and of course we just need to fill in the terrain there eventually. But let's go check the rest. Yes, that looks good. And the right side, yeah, this is a little too high, and then it down dipped a little too quickly, so we need to adjust that so that it gradually declines. So again, that is a common theme for this whole thing, is perfection is kind of like what we are hoping or looking forward to. And now let's look at that. Okay, so the decline is good, but there is a little sharp turn here. So again, I'm going to redo that. Okay, that looks great. Absolutely fantastic. So we can now fill in this area. All right, so let's go check out the top view. Let's see if the curves look good. I like that. Look at that. Look at those wide curves. Absolutely beautiful. Now we just need to connect this this on-ramp on this side on the left. So we have to kind of dig there, of course, make way for that ramp. And of course, we want to maintain that curve and make sure that the height is good. It's a little too high. Let's look a little closer. Yep, still slightly a little too high. We need to lower it down ever so slightly and then reconnect that. Let's check. It looks pretty good, but this here just needs to be a little deeper, and that should fix it. Okay, there you go. Just a little more there. There you go. Okay, look at that top view. Looks good. We can connect the top, we can do the right side, but overall it looks great. And now we have just this one final ramp to connect to the main highway. So the top part will connect to the right. So I will make this pathway going here. But then some of you may be thinking last ramp, what about the bottom part? How is the bottom highway gonna go to the left or the right? That is because this bottom highway is actually reserved for something else. And you'll notice that this is actually the end or the border of the map, and there isn't anything much that you can build there. I don't plan to unlock any more tiles there. So instead, what I'm gonna make use of that area is place a garbage facility. So always remember that when you create a new area, you have to first put in your highways, your interchanges, and then you gotta think of where your garbage facility will be. I mean, there are some instances or occasions where you forget to put in a school, an elementary, or even where to place your campuses and whatnot. But the garbage facility, you cannot misplace that. You really need to plan that ahead. Now it's time for the fun part where we can decorate this area, fill in the gaps in between the ramps, and we can also put in our trees and rocks. So in this area, like I mentioned, we will place in our garbage facility. Of course, we have to clear that out, remove all the trees, because when pollution is active, the trees will just rot, and that is never a pretty sight. I will be using the Japanese garbage facility from the content creator pack, and we're gonna mix in some landfill sites, a few incinerators, and we of course want to add in at least one extra highway ramp going to the right, but going to the left will not be necessary. This main road will justify its route going into the city, and that is all we actually need. We don't need to go all the way to the left. We will provide another garbage facility on the way left side of the city. And now we will continue, or actually somewhat finalize the design by adding in those rocks, trees, and fencing around the highway. And we do not want to put way too many rocks, because I made a previous version where I just placed in way too many rocks, and it's looked a little overkill. So at this time around, I actually decided to kind of slow down on that. You want to moderately place down large rocks and not go overkill on that, as I mentioned. And on this side, I will try to be consistent by placing toll booths on the entrances of our interchanges. But if you look at it, it seems rather strange that from the garbage facilities there's a toll booth, which is actually very bizarre. But I actually do intend to continue that highway to the corner of the map, which there will be a cargo harbor. because there is a cargo route nearby. So that is the reason why we have this. And also, I'm going to be building along the river at some point. And now all we need to do is finalize the mountain by adding in more features and refining the edges. So we will do this by using the small and medium brushes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dig little portions, and I am going to extend the other parts so that it is much more refined, and also slightly smoothen it out. And then we will finish this by adding in some rocks and a few trees at the large wide gap areas. And that wraps up this episode, but before we take off, let us review what we have accomplished. We built a mountain interchange because we wanted to have more build space in these areas. So instead of wasting all that real estate for an interchange, we placed the interchange here instead. And of course, this interchange and highway networks is to reduce future traffic here. You gotta think ahead of that. And here, this will eventually extend, and we'll have another interchange there. And once we unlock this tile, it will connect to that interchange. So it is very important to have that network of highways so that you will have no issue. So speaking of which, because we have been maintaining that, we have kept a 93% traffic flow. And let's actually check out the city stats. Yes, that is all good and well, nothing to worry about there. And then, but the only thing about this is that the mountain did grow slightly larger than it originally was, but it is definitely much more interesting. We spruced up a vanilla mountain, guys. Who would have thought it? And we've also managed to squeeze in a garbage facility in the back of this road, which will eventually continue. So I'm going to continue this road, and we will build a cargo hub right here. As you can see, there is a cargo line or ship line right there. I will place it right here, and then we will, so this cargo hub has a train track. Let me just put that down. So if you'll notice, it has a train line, and this train line, I will make it go through this, and it will also go through that other interchange. So when going this way, and the only reason why we're building this is because of the new train stations content creator pack. I mean, I think I'm the only cities player that hasn't been using those. You may notice that there's a difference between these interchanges, where this is much wider compared to this because I am more accustomed to building this. But here I am using the new highway bridges, which is here, 3-lane highway. So it has a different pillar compared to this. This is much shorter, while this is a little wider and it has more texture. So I did not know that. So this is something that I discovered when building this. So now if I'm going to build any bridges that are curved, I'll be using this highway from now on. This, yeah, I'm just accustomed to setting them apart because I'm anticipating things like this, because you need space between the highways for that suspension pillars. So that is why I have those spaces. So yeah, so this is old practice, and now this will be a new one for me to do. What else is there to say? Well, yeah, so adding in that train line is going to be another interesting project where we will rip through a train line right through the city, because of course that train line has to be relevant and has to have purpose and needs to go all throughout. So that is going to be interesting. And the final note is this trident looking toll booth. This is not a final design. I just wanted to connect that together to this temporary two campuses that we have. This is a temporary design. I just needed this to level up, so do not think that this is really part of the city. This is the main bulk of the city right here. And yeah, nothing much here will change. But this, now that we have an interchange, we can finally start thinking of how to finalize the design of this area. So if you enjoyed the video and want to see me play live, you can watch me stream in the link below. And if you're looking for inspiration, I also have social channels with screenshots. And if you want to connect with me and other mayors to share your screenshots or are looking for help with your city woes, feel free to check out the Discord. Until then, I hope you have a pleasant rest of your day. This is Captain Obvious. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next episode.